Good afternoon. Welcome to SEC Baseball Power Rankings. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Graham Doty and Alfred Ezman. Apologies for the later start on this. Meant to do it this morning. I had a family emergency that needed my attention, so here we are doing it this afternoon. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Let's jump right into it, and let's go from the bottom as we always do. Oreo's fired up about this. Alfred, number 16, the Missouri Tigers, who had a tough weekend this weekend.
Yeah, just to put it quite bluntly, this was a Evansville team they played that Kentucky played. Kentucky put up 24 runs against this Evansville team. Missouri struggled against this Evansville team, and that kind of puts into perspective where this team resides amongst the rest of the league. So tough go at it for Missouri. And again, we talked to Carrick Jackson before the season. All these injuries they have just are even more detriment to what they're trying to accomplish and stuff. Unfortunately, not a whole lot to talk about. Like I said, that's kind of what stood out to me was, you had Kentucky play this team and they seemingly dominated them. This isn't super regional Evansville we saw a year ago. This is quite frankly not good. Mid-major Evansville we're seeing this year, and Missouri was just looked non-existent out there. So very tough. There is a clear divide between Missouri and the rest of the league right now, and they don't have a lot of time until conference play to get it fixed.
Yeah, just a really tough weekend for Mizzou. That was a 4-game series, by the way, that they split against Evansville. And just right now, they're just searching for answers, especially on the mound. They gave up 6 runs or more in 3 of the 4 games this weekend. So if they want to try to turn things around and just be competitive, especially in SEC games, they're going to have to find answers on the mound.
Yeah, Missouri 6-6, the only SEC baseball team not above 500 at this point. Let's move on to South Carolina. I did not get to keep as much an eye on this series as I wanted to this weekend between the Gamecocks and Clemson. Disappointing outcome for South Carolina dropping all 3 games. I think they were all competitive, but Alfred, I think you had eyes on those, or maybe Graham, you did. I'll let one of you grab this one.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. The thing that stood out to me, obviously, I was wrong. I picked South Carolina in this series, and they absolutely ran into a buzzsaw. That was Eric Bakich and the Clemson Tigers. So they got swept, obviously. The key to this for me was I don't think South Carolina has saw this level of pitching from anybody yet like they did from Clemson. That was the big thing. These games, some of them were close, but they were mostly close because Clemson was having lapses themselves on offense. The pitching for the Tigers was great. You looked, I saw D1 Baseball posted this over the course of all the innings they played against South Carolina. They had a 33% strikeout rate as a pitching staff. Clemson did. Ew. When that's happening, things are really going your way. So that's the major thing to me. The South Carolina team is better than what they showed this weekend. I just think they ran into Clemson as the first big team they've played all year, and that's a really rough first big team to play. So. Not to get dejected. Don't get dejected. If you're a South Carolina fan, you're going to bounce back from this. You're going to win some SEC games. This team is good enough to do that. Just kind of a reality check for the time being, I think, against Clemson.
Yeah, I thought Clemson would win the series. I had Clemson taking 2 out of the 3, so a little bit surprised that South Carolina got swept. And I think it's fascinating. Paul Marineri, he's one of these coaches, like, he will be brutally honest after these games. I mean, if you listen to his press conferences, I mean, there's not much coach speak at all. So you can tell he just seems like he's trying to find answers, especially chemistry-wise. Like, you can just tell he's just trying to figure out who are the leaders on this team, that kind of thing. To me, for South Carolina, like, everybody knows Ethan Petrie's a stud, and he needs help in the lineup. Nathan Hall has had moments, and he's been really good so far this season. But outside of Petrie and Hall, there just hasn't really been much there offensively. And to me, if South Carolina is going to have to make a jump, it's going to be in the lineup. There's going to have to be other guys in the lineup to step it up a little bit, especially in 2 weeks here when SEC play starts.
Number 14, Kentucky. Cats still haven't really played much of anybody. Did sweep Hofstra this weekend by scores of, what was it? 7-5, 6-1, 9-1. Cole Hage continues to mash. Kentucky, pretty impressive on the pitching end of things. hard to know what to think of the Cats until we see them play somebody a little bit more challenging. A little surprised maybe they didn't move up one more spot, but we kept them in our 3-man composite at number 14 this week.
Yeah, don't let the 14 next to the name fool you. Kentucky, is looking very good as we get closer and closer to SEC play. Cole Hage did his thing like we all knew he would. Luke Lawrence was another guy who stood out to me this weekend, guys. Very good stuff from him in that Kentucky lineup. I'm very impressed with some of the bullpen performances I saw in particular. I wasn't with y'all on Friday, but Jackson Novy with the 5 strikeout performance he had Friday night stood out to me. This Kentucky team continues to roll. Again, they haven't played anyone super great, but I've liked what I've seen. Liked what I've seen from Nick Mingione's team. Interested to watch him this week, as this is the final week and weekend of non-conference play before we get into conference play. So keep a special eye on the Cats. Do not pay attention to that 14 next to their name. That's just where they end up, because the rest of the league is just unbelievable.
Yeah. I kind of think Nick Mingione's got to like where he is right now. I mean, they're 9-1. They're really just kind of flying under the radar. Not a lot of people are talking about them yet. Now, they haven't played a Power 4 opponent yet. So they got Wofford this weekend before. I think they open up against Georgia in SEC play. So to me, Cole Hage has been lights out. And Alfred, you touched on Luke Lawrence. He really did have a big weekend. Now, he didn't start at the beginning of the season for whatever reason. So now he's in the lineup. And if he keeps playing like he did this weekend, he could be an everyday player for Kentucky. And then also Tyler Bell. He's off to a good start this season. He leads the Wildcats in RBIs. So a lot of bright spots in all aspects for Kentucky this weekend as they continue to build momentum with SEC play right around the corner.
Yeah, I think their ranking is more an incomplete than a 14 at this point. When you look across, everybody's lost 0, 1, or 2 for the most part. I mean, it's just hard to know what to do when teams aren't playing anybody. I will note this. They haven't quite been able to game the RPI quite yet like they have in the past. Seems like this year they jump into the top 5 of the RPI in about week 2 and just kind of stay there. I don't know if they did anything differently or the teams they play just haven't been as good. I think they're 90 in the RPIs of this morning. Not going to matter long term. But anyway, Cole Hage, our guy, second in the SEC with a .614 on base percentage. Continue to be really impressed with what he's doing. All right, number 13, Mississippi State, which had a rough week. Graham, I'll let you hit on the Bulldogs here, who've been close, but just so short in a lot of opportunities so far against bigger name teams.
Yeah, so it really was a rough week for Mississippi State. If you remember going back to their midweek games, they dropped to Southern Miss. No shame there. Southern Miss beat TCU in Fort Worth over the weekend. And then then they lose to Troy, and then they hit the road for the first time this weekend. Took care of business against Rice. Rice really struggled this weekend in Houston. And then lose to Arizona and Oklahoma State. So kind of their level of competition jumped up in a big-time way this weekend, and they just couldn't really handle it this moment. Now, offensively, I thought they looked good, and it seems like they're trying to figure out the Hunter Hines situation, what they want to do with him. They just got to get him going offensively, because defensively he is really, really good over there at first base. So still a long season. Their pitching has been really good, starting pitching wise. I think bullpen, they're trying to find some answers there, but their pitching, especially Pico, has been really good for their game 1 outings. But to me, this kind of gives Lamonis a good idea of like what he has to work with, and just some of their newcomers, their transfers, or they're just trying to, I guess, get comfortable in the new style and system, especially once SEC play starts. So I think they'll be fine, but just kind of a tough like week and a half here for Mississippi State.
They ran into 2 teams in Arizona and Oklahoma State who have been playing way better. Arizona in particular, outside of a loss to Tennessee, go figure, a lot of teams have been doing that, has been playing way, way better this season. I think they had 7 in a row prior to losing to Tennessee, including the win over Mississippi State. Same thing with Oklahoma State. I mean, Oklahoma State's a team that can really hit. They had Nolan Schubert, one of their star hitters, get his first home run of the season. And Mississippi State fell behind big in that game. And I know they kind of came back and made it very close toward the end, and they showed some fight, which was good. But Yeah, just kind of a tough week. I mean, you kind of want to put that in the rear view, especially as you get closer to SEC play, because you combo what happened in Houston on top of the Troy loss. Rough go at it for the Bulldogs, but interested to see what they do this next week.
Sorry, I had the dog mute on. Gonna fact check this quickly. Yeah, we were near unanimous. Between 10 and 16, I think I had I was different than you guys on one vote. But that brings us to 12. We were unanimous on this one. Vanderbilt at 12. The Commodores go 2-2 on the week, fall 3 spots in the power rankings. Did not hit very well from about the middle of game 1 on this weekend in the weekend series out west. Concerned about Ethan McIlvain, not pitching well. Thought to be maybe their ace. He's not pitched like it. Yeah, the Commodores at 12. Good luck watching them this weekend. You had to pay for the Big Ten Network, and then you couldn't get it at all on Sunday. So I'm assuming you guys weren't splurging for that.
No, the thing I did thing I did catch was this stat here. It was the losses to UConn and USC. They had a combined 4 walks in those 2 games as a team. When you're struggling to score runs, that's not going to help you. So that's another thing to look at too, is plate discipline, in the next few games with this team, how they bounce back from that.
And by the way, USC is good. I mean, they only have 1 loss this season. That's not a bad loss by any means. And UConn is a team that has consistently made the regionals as well. But again, I give credit to Vandy to making not 1 but 2 trips out west. Like, nobody in the SEC does that in any sport, and they've done it twice this season. But they're going to have to start to find some answers here, especially offensively. They didn't score more than 3 runs the last 2 games in that tournament.
Yeah, I'm looking strength of schedule. I'm going to have to back up. I think they played the top strength of schedule in the league so far.
Probably just because they played the most road games too.
Well, yeah, that helped. It's RPI calculation, so yours may differ. Let's see. Yeah, they played 24. Well, I hate Warren Nolan's page does not include strength of schedule on the league page. You have to kind of do it manually. In any case, yeah, they've been on the road a lot. They'll come back home this week. They got Xavier this weekend, which will not be an easy series. All right, 11 Ole Miss. Graham, I'm going to throw this to you. I think you might have had some eyes on the Rebels this weekend.
Yeah, just Ole Miss continues to take care of business. All these games weren't really close by any means, and just Ole Miss kind of consistently went about it. Good news for Ole Miss. Like, again, the game plan this season, Mike Bianco wanted to go with older guys, veteran guys that have played, over 120 games throughout the course of their career. All brand new outfielders, and this veteran experience has really started to show, especially in the non-conference play. Moorhead continues to play at a high level. Again, like, he hit for his career like around 270 in the Big Ten. You always wonder how that's going to translate in the SEC, and so far he's been outstanding. And then Mitchell Sanford had a really good weekend, and just a lot of their other new additions. And then Luke Hill just continues to play at a high level. He's to play a new position for the first time in your life, like he has at third base this season, and to make it look as easy as he has, like, it just kind of shows you the type of athlete that he has. So he's making the jump from second base to third base. He'll still play second base every once in a while, but he has really elevated his game defensively and offensively this season, and he's a big reason why Ole Miss is off to the great start that they are.
Yeah, it's beating a dead horse, I think. But you look at that outfield full of transfers. They're some of the best hitters on this team outside of Luke Hill and Judd. So that's been huge for them. I know Ryan Moorman was excellent this weekend from what I saw. And you took a really good Arlington at the beginning of the year, and you've kind of rolled with it if you're Mike Bianco in that ball club. So continue to watch out for this Ole Miss team. That they are not like, I don't think at this point they are like last year's Ole Miss team. I think they are noticeably better. So not an easy game once we hit SEC play against this squad. Very excited for them. Very good weekend.
Yeah, Luke Hill has a slash line of 421, 538, 711. If you're wondering, the 1249 OPS, that's 14th in the league. That's absurd. I want to get to where I'll get to a little bit. The cutoff mark for 1,000 OPS. Where does that rank in the league? I'll look that up in a minute. But the big stat guy the big stat line to me still remains Hunter Elliott. We talked about it Friday, but he's yet to give up a run. He's walked 8 guys in 15 innings, which is not ideal. But nobody's hitting the ball. And the biggest thing is he's got 15 innings under his belt. That's kind of what you wanted to see. How deep can he go into starts? So I think that's the most encouraging. I would say I could argue that Hunter Elliott's been the number one storyline among players in the league so far because hadn't pitched in 2 years. We know what he was 2 years ago. We just didn't know what would get there. There's been plenty of storylines in the league, but to me, that's still the one that I'm kind of paying attention to the most. Okay, let's get to number 10. We got the Auburn Tigers, who've looked really, really good. He continued to say that the year after Butch Thompson has a down year, Auburn usually responds pretty well, and I feel like this team is really playing well as we are a week out from SEC play.
Yeah, you start out the weekend run ruling Ohio State, and then you beat Oregon State. Oregon State's a pretty good baseball team if you follow college baseball at all. So that's a very good win very, very good win for Auburn. The standout story, though, I think out of all this was, you got a really short – that Oregon State game was the one I really caught the most. You went up against Dax Whitney. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dax Whitney or anyone who watches. He is a very good freshman pitcher.
Yep.
For Beavers, and they got to him early and they got to him often and they got him out of there quick. He went, 3 2/3 innings. He's gone deeper than that so far this year. So that was very good from that Auburn team. You got 2 hits out of Ike Irish, 2 hits out of Chris Rembert, who was a, really good freshman from Pensacola for them. And then you go on and you finish out the weekend sweeping through Arlington. So very good stuff from Auburn. And yeah, like you said, if they should continue to keep this up. I think this upcoming week they have UAB and Old Dominion and then UT Martin and then SEC play. So I don't know how Old Dominion is. Maybe you guys have a better feel for them. I know UAB may be a little tough, but pretty smooth sailing for Butch Thompson's team heading into SEC play, all things considered. So like where Auburn sits, and they should continue to rise if they keep this up.
Yeah. So, Alfred, you just went over their schedule. Like, they're going to have 1 or 2 losses maybe before SEC play starts. So they are sitting pretty. I see Deacon in the chat says we're undervaluing Auburn. I mean, yeah, maybe. We all kind of thought that they would have a bounce back season, and they've just been awesome, especially offensively. They just got it's now 8 guys in the lineup that have double-digit hits. And one thing we haven't touched on yet, Eric Guevara, who Butch was really high on, everyday third baseman, potentially who they thought they were going to lean on this season. He's barely played. He's only played in 4 games this season. So that's another bat in this lineup. Once they get him back healthy, they're going to be even more dangerous.
Yeah, some Auburn fans in the chat are pointing out the freshman class. With apologies maybe to Tennessee, I'd have to spend some time thinking on it. I feel like Auburn has gotten more production out of freshmen than anybody. Tennessee's are more on the hitting side. Auburn's gotten both. Christian Chatterson was really good against Baylor this weekend. He was one of I think they had 2 top arms that they got, 2 really good ones. I can't remember if he was their first or second best. But point is, Bub Terrell's been hitting lately. We've talked about him. I just feel like this is a very, very good freshman class for Auburn that Butch Thompson is building on. And look, people are giving us hard time about the power rankings. Look, I think we would all say on a scale of 1 to 10, my confidence rating in what we've got is no more than a 2 right now. It's not that we haven't watched teams and paid attention, but it's, scheduling has been very disparate. It's nothing like we're going to see 2 weeks from now. And, baseball's a funny game. Guys get hurt, guys come in, guys come out. You're subject to bad breaks and weather and all sorts of stuff. So, look, we do the best we can. You might be right. We could be low on Auburn. Time will tell, but I really like their ball club. Feel pretty strongly that they've got a regional caliber team. Okay, next up, let's go to another team in that state, Alabama. One of 3 unbeatens in the league at this point?
Yes.
3 or 4.
Oklahoma and Tennessee.
Yep. Yeah, and Alabama just continues to rake. You can't go a show without mentioning Justin LeBron. But gosh, they've got a transfer that's killing it too. This is why you keep your show notes in front of you.
Torres? Jason Torres?
Well, he's one of them, and Bonamalo's another one. But good grief. It's a middle infield guy, and it'll come to me in a minute. But anyway, Alabama's transfers are really producing. That's the bigger point.
Yeah, they have been. And I understand the schedule. They only played North Dakota State, but they played very well against North Dakota State. Maybe, I don't know if you were thinking Brennan Norton, but when I was
That's
there
the
Saturday,
one. Yep.
When I was there Saturday, he stood out, had a 2-home run game on Saturday against that team. North Dakota State actually did okay. Like Riley Quick made the start that day, and Riley Quick wasn't dominant or anything. In fact, he wound up in the trouble sometimes. Did work his way out of it, but in the end, Alabama gets it done. They remain undefeated. They are really on an upward trajectory, and I love where Rob Vaughn's club is. You can argue they're hitting better than a lot of the teams in the SEC right now, like you said. And, the game I went to, you had everyone hitting home runs. Justin LeBron got the first run on the board with a home run. Brendan Norton, like I said, had 2. Jason Torres had 1. It was a derby. And I mean, I'm very excited for this Alabama team. They do have an interesting midweek schedule this week. They have Jacksonville State and then Troy in back-to-back days. So kind of they can win both, but it's not easy. You know what I mean? We know, ask the Mississippi State fans how playing Troy goes. And so we'll see how it goes. And plus Troy and Alabama, it's an in-state thing. We'll see how that works out. But nonetheless, don't take away from what Alabama's done. It doesn't take away from what Alabama's done this year. They've been great. Looking forward to watching them play some more.
Yeah. So Chris, if you remember Friday nights, we were touching on this game. Alabama, they smoked North Dakota State in game 1. Double-digit hits. They scored 12 runs, and Justin LeBron did not have a hit in that game. He went over, and then the rest of the weekend he was just playing out of his mind. And if you look at his numbers in the country, he's either number 1 or number 2 in the country in several offensive categories. He already has 8 home runs and 28 RBIs. So if he continues to play at this level, I mean, he is going to be heavily in the mix for SEC Player of the Year.
No doubt. Let's see. Find my banners again. All right. Number 8, Texas. Also another team. Oh, but I know what I meant to ask. Alfred, you went to Alabama this weekend. Tell me about the new ballpark. I've not been in that place yet.
It's awesome. I don't know. I think we had a few Alabama people in the chat, but leave your comments about it. I did a review for it. Actually, it's pretty cool. Like, I think it's got that right field. It's got that right field terrace and everything. We didn't come back against Ohio State. Very
comment of the day so far. Carry on. Sorry.
No, you're good. He also War Eagle 17 also called Alabama overrated. Go figure. I would not have expected that. But the ballpark was great. Yeah, out of all the college ones I've been to, it's the best one I've been to. You guys have definitely been to more than I have, I feel like. But with that being said, it's, big, brick cement structure on the outside, like a beautiful brick cement structure, cool museum on the inside. It's got the MLB alumni they have. I loved it. There's also a playground for kids underneath the scoreboard stuff. And they were like, one thing I noticed was all the home runs they were hitting were ending up in that area. So that's clever stuff from the Alabama athletic department, putting a playground there to get kids involved. So very happy and satisfied with Sewell Thomas Stadium. We'll be heading back if I can in the near future.
They don't have a swimming pool there, do they?
In the ballpark?
Yeah.
They need one.
Like the Diamond?
Every ballpark.
We'll be getting
field.
We'll be getting ballparks with swimming pools later in the power ranking. Just a little tease here. I think you guys know what I'm hitting at. Let's see. Number 7, finally, Texas. Another big weekend. I did not get eyes on the Longhorns this weekend. I'll throw it to whichever one of the two of you did.
Well, you can't go wrong with a sweep on a neutral site and a far neutral site. You beat an in-state rival, an old Big 12 rival in Texas Tech. You look up and down. I guess the Washington game was pretty close. But besides that, the Texas Tech and Illinois game, they kind of handled business. I saw Will Gasparino went yard. Whenever that happens, good things tend to happen. You get, good performances. I'm looking out of guys like Adrian Rodriguez, who continues to impress. Ethan Mendoza, guys, I really think if you look at this Texas team, he has been he's not Max Ballou, he's not Will Gasparino, he's not even Adrian Rodriguez, but he is doing just as much as those guys are. And you see, like I see it every time I look at this team. It's 2 hits, like every single game. I'm super impressed with him, and he continued to do that this weekend. And it's like we said at the beginning, it's not a bad first year so far for Jim Schlossnagle. I mean, they win the Arlington Shriners Showdown Championship. They win this one out in Vegas. They're racking up their titles, their multi-team event titles. But it's just, about creating a culture again there in Austin, and he's doing it. So super impressed with Texas. They're another team continuing to increase in stock.
Yeah, I was impressed with them as well. They leave the state of Texas for the first time, and all of those games were pretty late out west. They were in control of that Washington game most of the way, and then Washington kind of made things interesting late. But Texas was able to hold on. But other than that, I mean, Texas looked really, really good. And, Alfred, you kind of touched on what they look like offensively. Mendoza has kind of been one of their studs offensively. Rodriguez, too. To me, I feel like we've touched on their pitching and just what it will look like bullpen-wise. And you can tell they're starting to lean on 3 guys. One of those is Max Grubbs. Couple saves already this season. He's got 11 strikeouts to just 1 walk in his 5 outings. Again, I look at appearances more than innings pitched for bullpen guys, just because that tells you, or that tells me at least, who the coaches trust, like when the game is on the line and everything. So Grubbs has looked really good. And they've also leaned on Rojas out of the bullpen as well. Still curious how they're going to use Grayson Saunier. He's barely pitched at all this season. Fascinated to see if they want to continue to use him in the bullpen, or will he be a starter? But to me, Texas looked really, really good, and they were by far the best team in that tournament in Vegas over the weekend.
Yeah, you could have given me 8 or 9 guesses before the season who's leading Texas in OPS at this point of the season. Ethan Mendoza would not have been.
Right.
Not have been on that list. I would have guessed Ballou or Gasparino or somebody, although Ballou's just that far behind it. But point is, for Texas, that's a great sign. They were looking for some bats. They thought Tommy Farmer was better than they thought. Gasparino lit it up. If Ethan Mendoza is a big part of what they're doing, pitching willing, I have a feeling Texas could end up higher than the 8. All right, Oklahoma's got to be going, guys, what do we do to move up your power rankings? We're unbeaten. We're number 4 in the RPI. They're the number 1 RPI team in the SEC, by the way, at number 4 nationally. So for whatever that's worth, that could come into play later. Say if OU has one of those years, and somebody always does. You always have a good team that gets just killed by the conference schedule, and they get in by non-conference RPI. If that's the case with Oklahoma, you got to love what the Sooners have done so far, because that's probably going to help them. Another Kyson Witherspoon weekend. Oklahoma just continues to get it done, pitching and hitting wise, both ways.
Yeah, they outscore CSUN. 22-4 over the course of their 3 games they played. I think that's right. We're going to say that's right. Because my math might be a little off, but we're going to go with that. So 22-4 is how they outscore them. Pitching, to me, the story again, it can carry this team far. Not that the hitting wasn't great. The hitting was really great. Like I said, you just look at the score differential between the 2 teams. You can tell that. But it's just the thing that sticks out. You look at what Malachi Witherspoon did even on Saturday. He gave up a ton of hits, but no earned runs. He gave up just one run that was not earned. You could tell that he worked himself into trouble, but was able to work himself out of it. You got a dominant start out of Kyson Witherspoon again on Friday. The Witherspoon brothers continue to work. Yeah, I want to move Oklahoma up our power rankings badly. They're one of 7 or 8 undefeated teams left in the country, one of 3 left that are undefeated in our conference. And they continue just to put the work on everybody they play, and impressed with the pitching. I know it's not an LSU pitching staff or an Arkansas pitching staff, but it's right there. It's close to it. So just looking forward to seeing them work some more. And if they're undefeated going into conference play, that's really something Skip Johnson's got to like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And to me, what stands out about Oklahoma, they kind of know their identity. You know, they know their strengths and kind of who they are. They lead the league in stolen bases, and they might not hit the most home runs, but they just get on base and they just make the other team pay. So that's kind of been their recipe for success. Everybody 1 through 9 in their lineup already double-digit hits this season. Again, once you know your identity and you're comfortable with who you are, like you just are comfortable and you just play at a high level. And that's just what we've seen so far from Oklahoma. I still think Malachi Witherspoon is getting adjusted to his new role, going from closer last year to starting pitcher this season. I think once things click for him and he starts to figure it out, you know, they could make another jump higher in the standings here in the SEC and in our power rankings. But a really, really strong start to the season for Oklahoma.
Yeah, best set of twins in the league, hands down. Probably the only set of twins in the league, but still. I think you put a lot of twins in the league and wouldn't outdo this bunch. Kyson has thrown 18 innings, 3-0 record, .50 ERA, 28 strikeouts, which I think is second in the league behind Liam Doyle. And Malachi has thrown 14 1/3, 13 strikeouts, a 1.88 ERA. Hey, you start with those guys on the weekend, they pitch like that. You just need your offense to be okay, and OU's has been more than that so far. Let's get to number 6, Georgia. I think Georgia has been number 6 every week. Preseason, week 1, week 2, week 3. Here's a stat for you. I don't think we've talked about him at all, but first baseman Rylan Zabrowski, who transferred from Miami of Ohio, 4th in the league with a 1553 OPS. Georgia had an interesting weekend, a bunch of close games, including a walk-off of Florida Gulf Coast. But the Bulldogs still have not lost since they lost to, I don't even remember who it was now, against Wilmington. Was it Wilmington? It was in the Wilmington tournament. Couldn't remember if it was against them. But anyway, Georgia just keeps rolling and is getting it done. And without even its starting pitching in full health like we hoped.
Yeah, Saturday really impressed me during their doubleheader. They clear house and run rule Florida Gulf Coast in the first game of that doubleheader. The second game is very close. In fact, they came back in that game. They were down 8-2 in that game, and I'm sure everyone saw the Florida Gulf Coast tweet. Aren't these guys supposed to be SEC? And then that admin, had to really rethink what he did there. It was not a wise decision. So, but then later on in that game, Trey Phelps homered, and then Slade Alford eventually walked it off with a hit up the middle that scored Dan Jackson. That really stood out to me. Like this team, doubleheaders are tiring, one for teams to play in a single day, and you're just like so high off, getting the run rule win in the initial game. You come into that second game and you find yourself behind 8-2. It's very easy to pack it in, but Wes Johnson's guys did not do that, and you get your 2 big players at the end of that game coming through and getting some big hits to help earn you the win there. In a 4-game sweep, it's a 4-game sweep. So credit to Georgia. They are, again, just continuing to assert themselves as SEC play gets closer. This is a team that's going to win series in SEC play. So really, really looking forward to watching them work, going into conference play that starts a little over a week from now, and we'll see where they end up.
Yeah, I was impressed by Georgia just because 3 out of the 4 games they were pretty close, and they were down in most of these games this weekend, and then they just found a way to bounce back and respond. So really impressed with them and just how they were able to handle adversity. Chris touched on the newcomer Rylan out of Miami of Ohio. It just feels like the mainstay for Georgia in this lineup is Alford. I mean, he's just been so good once the season started. Another thing I noticed, Charlie Goldstein went longer than an inning over the weekend. So, will they continue to try to make him go a little bit longer as we inch closer to SEC play? So that'll certainly be something to watch. But their bullpen continues to be good for the most part. And again, this is a very talented team, and you can just tell they're going to continue to gain confidence and get more comfortable. And they got Columbia as their 3-game series before SEC play. So they're going to have a really good record before SEC play starts as well.
Let's get to number 5, Arkansas. Gabe Gackle. Got to see him pitch better. They still got a ton of arms, but Arkansas wins another series, maybe closer than the fans wanted against Charlotte. And by the way, I know the hitting is an issue. That's still a cold place to play. Fayetteville, I don't think it's probably a real fun place to play baseball this time of the year. I don't think a lot of places in the SEC have been fun to play with the cold weather so far, but that's probably a little worse than most people. What do we got on the Razorbacks here at number 4? Or 5, excuse me. Is Arkansas? Let's see. If we had them 5 or 4 the last few weeks, I'll check that. But they've been one of the 2 all year.
Yeah, Woo Pig Parker Coyle, immaculate ending on Sunday. Shout out to him for that. Actually came in relief on Friday and did really well too. Probably the best reliever, I would argue, out of anyone in the country, although I have to check my other conferences before I say that. He's up there, certainly, to say the least. Yeah, I mean, when there's some of their starters like Gackle ran into trouble, he was one of the ones to help put out that fire, especially on Friday's game when they had to come back, you know what I mean, and win that game in a shootout, 11-10. Nonetheless, though, they kind of get it done against Charlotte and handle that team soundly. The thing to me was Parker Coyle. I mean, that could be a guy they go to out of the bullpen pretty often now, if not already, with how he performed this weekend. So Arkansas off a sweep, sitting very comfortably in the top 5 as they should.
Yeah, big weekend for the Alloy brothers. They continue to get the job done along with Brent Iredale. Chris, you said it. I know Arkansas fans, they want to win and they want to win big, but hey, you'll take a win all day. So it might not be what you expected, but Razorbacks just continue to win. Now, to me, obviously, the question mark is they've been so good on the mound for so long. Yeah. Dave Van Horn. Gackle, he's got to get better. I mean, I'm sure he'll be the first one to tell you that. And then injury-wise, how long is Wood going to be out? So that's kind of a big wild card right now for Arkansas with the way Gackle's been pitching, and then the injury to Wood. A strong point, though, Zach Rube just continues to pitch at a very high level. 26 strikeouts, just 5 walks in his 3 starts this season. So he's been really good, and they just need to find, with the injuries and Gackle struggling, they need to find some more answers maybe on the mound here starting wise, because they got to have somebody go 4 or 5 innings, especially with their offense. Their offense, I think it'll start to click, but it's been pretty slow offensively for Arkansas so far to start the season. Now they're in great shape, 10-1. They're going to be having one of the best records in the SEC once we hit conference play.
Number 4, the hardest team to rank, in my opinion, Texas A&M, because, boy, if you ranked it on performance so far, I think they could be 15. I also think that'd be really stupid. I also think this team's going to play a lot better than it's played, but you got to recognize what some teams are doing in front of them. Look, it might even be fair to put Auburn, Alabama, some other teams, Oklahoma, that are below them, above them, but that's where we settled. Where did they settle in D1's national this week? Were they
they fell
12 or 13? They fell a lot.
It was a hard drop. Yeah. I think they're 11.
Yeah, they're around there. They had a lot of people get on them last week about that. So I don't know if that had to play into it, but certainly their Houston performance had some play into it, to say the least.
I think you could put whatever number by their name right now, almost. I mean, you couldn't put them 1 or 2, obviously, because we're going to get to those 2. And I don't think you could put them 3 either. So this is probably the highest they could go. But I just don't think you completely can ignore what this team is. Obviously, this is not the team we thought we'd get with Grohovac. But, who was it? One of the players went to Twitter this weekend.
Yes.
With Shane Stout.
Yeah, who's hurt and out for the year. So that might be the one guy that could do it. But when you're seeing that stuff this early in the year, I don't know, maybe it's just an overreaction. If they rip off 10 wins in a row, which they're capable of doing, everybody forgets it and moves on. But I want to see something like that before we ever get to conference play. That does raise an eyebrow.
Yeah, it does. The thing I wrote, prior to their games in Houston was, look, they're going up against 2 really good starting pitchers in Colin McKinney for Arizona Friday, and then Harrison Bodendorf, the Hawaii transfer Oklahoma State has, on Saturday. Bodendorf railed through their lineup. I mean, it was like nothing. 7 strikeouts for him. He gave up just 1 hit. In fact, they had 4 hits in that game that they were shut out in against Oklahoma State. That was the problem because, I mean, you had 10 strikeouts that Justin Lampkin gave you, and you couldn't get any offense out of it. It's probably pretty frustrating for Lampkin to see that, but that's how it ends up. And then you got to give him a little credit, though, and this is what I'll talk about mostly, is the game against Rice last night. You get shut out like that, and you're really at a low point, I feel like, at least as far as the beginning season stretch goes. And, you don't know how you're going to respond, even against Rice, who is playing at home and, is throwing all their cards, is throwing everything all in, if you will, against this team. And they put up, 5 home runs? I know Caden Kent had 2, Wyatt Henseller had 1, Hayden Schott had 1, and then Gavin Cash had 1 as well. You get, a 3-hit. Is it a 3-hit performance? Yes, a 3-hit performance out of Jay Laviolette. That was a good response to this, and I think that's what's keeping them afloat right now. And really, you just kind of you love to see that if you're a Texas A&M fan or involved with that program in any way, because man, those 2 starting pitchers that I mentioned, that they got through that lineup pretty easily. And it's what's the saying, a hot knife through butter? Yeah, it was like a hot knife through butter. I had to make sure I was getting the right saying in there, but that's what it was for McKinney and then Bodendorf on Saturday. So good response in the end. As far as Texas A&M goes, it's a long year. Look, this team is still really, they're still right around a top 10 team at the worst. I don't think you can rank them outside of the top 15 whatsoever in whatever ranking you have. But I would need a really good week, if you're Texas A&M before SEC play.
Yeah, man, to me, it just seems like there's so much pressure on Texas A&M, and they had the 4-game losing streak entering the game yesterday. They get shut out by Oklahoma State, only 2 runs against Arizona. Chris, we were watching that live. So they had the lead, and then they blew it late to Arizona. Arizona, I mean, I think they won 9 games in a row after the week 1 tournament in Texas. So they've been playing hot. So no shame to lose to Arizona there. And then yesterday, boy, if somebody needed a win, it was Texas A&M in the worst way. Rice jumped out to an early 3-0 lead, and it's like, uh-oh, like this could be the longest weekend ever here for Texas A&M. And then the offense finally clicked and exploded. They finally run rule somebody 14-4 yesterday in 7 innings. Here's kind of my takeaway. And I don't know if y'all agree, but nowadays in the NIL era, it just seems like fans are more angry because everybody is more invested. Like, you kind of feel like if you put your money into a team, like, you want to see results. I mean, as an Ole Miss fan, like the Ole Miss football season this past season, a lot of people put a lot of money into the Ole Miss football season. And when Ole Miss started to lose those games, like losing at home to Kentucky, I mean, there were so many fans that were so upset. Nobody was enjoying the moment at all. And you're kind of getting a sense of that right now with Texas A&M. And when you see players put stuff on social media like that, I mean, guys, like, we're early March and you're already seeing social media posts like that. And it's just not good. And it just makes me wonder if in this new era, fans are upset more because, they can actually contribute to their favorite team in their favorite sport. And it just seems like the leash is so much shorter now than what it has previously been. I don't know if you guys agree, but I'm not going to write off A&M. I mean, I saw with my own eyes in person, Ole Miss was 7-14 in the SEC, and they end up winning the national championship. Yeah. I mean, just out of nowhere, they just get hot as a 3 seed, and I think they lost 1 game in the entire postseason run 2 years ago. So I'm not going to write A&M off, but boy, when you see stuff on social media like that from the players, it is not good. So that they have a little bit of soul searching to do before SEC play starts.
Yeah. Hey, look, we could do a whole show on that. I mean, you saw the Kansas basketball thing this weekend. I presume you guys saw that. Yes. And that was a little different, but yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just an age where people can, do what they want, hide behind a name, and say all kinds of things to you, and it's a shame. And I think the other thing too, and as you're going through that, Graham, I'm thinking, Ryan Prager turned down second-round money. I think it was solid second-round money too to come back. I'm presuming a paycheck would be in there too. And I think when that is the bad thing of the NIL era is you get stuff like that maybe people feel more empowered. Or maybe people are just jerks anyway. I don't know. But anyway, it is what it is. Let's get to number 3. And by the way, I've got a hard out here at 3:30. So we'll have to pace these accordingly. Florida, let's start with the bad news for Florida. First of all, they've been playing tremendous baseball until they finally, fell apart a little bit in the Sunday game with Miami. But, Alfred, we got some injuries to watch that I know we were texting about. What's the update on those?
Yeah, so Cade Curlin was in a sling in the dugout after his little mishap fielding a ball. We hope that's okay. That's obviously not what you want to see, though, initially when he comes out of there. You had that last year with Florida. Remember when Ty Evans had that wrist injury, and it didn't really hurt. Well, it didn't really hurt them that much. They went to Omaha, but you kind of want to have all your guys there. You know what I mean? We see what Florida looks like when they have all their guys there. We see it. They're undefeated for a great stretch of time. So we'll get an update on that. Apparently with Coppola, he was having blisters on his hands. This is from the Gators Diamond Pod. And if I know Florida fans get a lot of their baseball news from them. Coppola was having blisters on his hand, and I think Aiden King had already been warming up for a little bit. So Sullivan was like, we're going to take you out early just to keep it safe. And Aiden's been, warming up for a while. And Aiden King turned out okay. I mean, he was pitcher of the week in the SEC for crying out loud. So it wasn't a bad decision. So I think Coppola is going to be fine. I just think, it was just a precautionary thing and stuff like that. And they had the trainer come out to look at it and whatever. Curlin was in a sling. We'll see how that goes. That stinks though. I mean, that's a veteran guy you'd want, out there playing for your team. So that's the updates there. As far as the results go though, I mean, you get a series win over an in-state rival you don't like at home after, a season of playing pretty much no one great. I know Stetson's a pretty good mid-major who gives them a run for their money. North Florida gave them a run for their money. But that's the best team you've played so far, and you do pretty well against them over the weekend. Luke Heyman had a big home run. He had 2 big home runs, actually, in the game on Saturday. Yeah, in the game on Saturday, he had 2 big home runs. Bobby Boser homered again. This team has power, guys. They're continuing to hit the ball really well. The pitching is off the charts. The Coppola thing, I don't think is that huge of a deal if it's just a blister or something like that. So we'll keep you updated on the injuries when we do shows during the week if we hear stuff. I'm pretty confident though about this Gator team heading into SEC play.
Yeah, I am too, especially offensively. When you look at their numbers, they're pretty consistently top 3 all across the board. I want to give a shout out to the Florida fans. I saw they broke the single game attendance record and just 3-game weekend series record. So that's a relatively new ballpark. They renovated it, and it looks really, really good compared to what they were previously working with. So I know you're playing an in-state rival, but they've been good for so long now, and it's good to see, the fans start to show up at the high level. So I think they had over 6,000 in one game over the weekend to set the program record. So if they continue to play at the high level that we all think they will in front of a packed house like that, they're going to be awfully tough to beat at home.
This time of year, I look more at how teams stack up in roles than I do. Well, I always look at it that way more than I do just raw stats. And here's something that really pops. You sort the SEC strikeout leaders, and Florida's the only team with 3 guys in the top 13. That's Liam Peterson and Pierce Koppel at 23 and Jake Clemente at 21. Batting average is against for those guys, 145 for Peterson, 098 for Coppola, and 128 for Clemente. Now, I know competition's going to get tougher, but that's when you start with 3 guys like that, if they stay healthy, that's going to be a very, very hard team to beat. All right. We were unanimous at 1 and 2. Let's get to our number 2 team this week, where we differed from D1, which put this team at number 1 nationally. We got LSU at 2. The Tigers playing good ball across the board. Daniel Dickinson continuing to really perform very well for them. One of the top hitters we watched, Anthony Einson, a starter that I really liked from out west, pitching well for LSU. Quickly, guys, what do we got on the Tigers this weekend?
Great game from Josh Pearson Saturday. 4-hit game for him, I think, against Nebraska. That was a really good good game overall for this LSU team. They had 17 hits as a team. That's pretty good when you do that, when you end up doing that. Outside of that, Sunday game against Sam Houston, Chase Shores got the start. 5 strikeouts, 5 innings. He gave up a lot of hits, 4 earned runs. Cade Woods came out, did the same thing. The bullpen from there, though, was very good. Cooper Williams, DJ Primo, Maverick Rizzi, all the guys that came out there and got some work in. I know Jaden Newt got the save. Did a very good job. That's just what we come to expect with this LSU bullpen. And lo and behold, just like Texas and just like Auburn, they go into this multi-team event at a neutral site and they win it and they bring home that championship. So a lot of teams in the SEC did that. LSU did it out in Frisco. Shout out to them. They are right there and have an argument for the best team in the SEC. We didn't think so. Obviously, that team's coming up next, but really good job by this LSU team. They did it all this weekend and deserve this number 2 spot.
Yes, all gritty wins too, as I saw that in the chat, and I agree. They leave the state of Louisiana for the first time. Remember, they start the week with a nice win over a ranked Dallas Baptist team, and they trailed, throughout the tournament this weekend. Trailed against Kansas State and Nebraska. They win late against Kansas State, and then offense started to click late against Nebraska, and they handled Sam Houston there. So really impressed with them, especially offensively. And it's starting to seem like Daniel Dickinson is really starting to get comfortable at the plate here, towards the top in the conference in RBIs. He's got 21 already for LSU. So bright future for sure for the Tigers.
All right, number 1, and then again, I got to be out of here in about 5. Is anybody his guest who's paying attention by now? Tennessee. This is starting to feel like the Tennessee team from 2 years ago that just felt like it was almost lapping the field before conference play started. Not quite there, but I think the competition may be a little better at the top in the league this year. While you guys were talking, I was trying to do some sorting on the stats and figure out, like, in what major category is Tennessee not in the top 2, hitting-wise, pitching-wise. I mean, on the offensive numbers, it's kind of a race between them and Alabama right now at the top in all the power categories and the hitting categories. Pitching-wise, they're in the ballpark with some other teams. I think they're number 2 in strikeouts. I think they're number 1 in ERA. They don't field the ball as well as some other teams. If you want to find a knock on them, that's probably it. But when the ball's not in play, that's minimized. Yeah, I mean, it is a dominating start by Tennessee, and I was a little surprised to see them not a unanimous number 1 in the polls this week. Maybe it's because you get in the habit of moving teams up from where they were, and LSU had to jump on Tennessee. But anyway, the Vols went to Houston and played extremely well and remain unbeaten as we sit here in March now.
Yeah, Michael Morris in the chat says Vols are not number 1 when they play on a high school-sized ball field. Michael, they played in a major league ballpark this weekend and hit a lot of home runs this weekend. So there's that. You had Gavin Keelan win SEC Player of the Week. That was a very tough decision as I roll my eyes. He had 2 home runs in 2 games and ends up with 4. I'm sure, he's a big reason why Tennessee is towards the top or at the top of the country in home run hitting right now. You have your freshman playing outstanding in the field, and Manny Marin, and then Levi Clark at the hot corners. I sent that in, and it's when Tennessee's already doing that and playing the way they are, things are going right. Pitching was great again. Liam Doyle had a great start on Friday, but again, these guys, that's just kind of an added bonus for this team. It's like they don't really need it with the way they're hitting. I mean, they are pounding the baseball against whoever they play. They got their first good taste of competition against teams like Oklahoma State and Arizona, and they beat them pretty soundly, I think, for the most part. And Oklahoma State had some home runs themselves towards the end of the game, but up until that point, Tennessee was just raking against that team with their guys hitting home runs. I'm pretty confident in saying everyone who's watched college baseball thinks this team is number 1 in the country, in all honesty. I'll go ahead and throw that out there. Certainly for a power ranking like we're doing. I mean, come on. I mean, you just have to turn on the TV and watch them to figure that out. But yeah, this seems like Tennessee hasn't skipped a beat from last season.
Yeah, and this season, I mean, it really from day one they have just taken it to whoever they have played so far this season. So this was by far their biggest test, and to me, they just passed with flying colors. They can just continue to pass the eye test. Really handled Rice, beat a solid Oklahoma State team, and beat a good Arizona team. So, Chris, you alluded to their offensive numbers. They lead the SEC in home runs. They got 2 more than Alabama. And this is really without Andrew Fisher. You know, he hasn't really had the monster weekend yet. I think he'll get there. He just has to get more comfortable. And once, you know, he figures things out at the plate, you know, Tennessee is just going to be a monster to deal with, especially offensively.
Well, and they don't have A.J. Russell yet, who is potentially – well, that's Liam Doyle now. But coming into the year would have potentially been their best arm, I would have said. They're trying it out here and there with a really talented freshman class. Like, the thing that makes them impressive is they haven't figured out where all the parts fit yet. And they got spare parts when injuries hit, and injuries usually do hit. Usually, no matter who you are, you lose 1 or 2 guys for at least a few weeks. And I think that's what makes them so dangerous. I get the schedule hasn't been the greatest, although it was pretty good this weekend. And the style of play, jokes are flying in the chat too. I get that. But look, just watch them. When you've got a 1 on Fridays, the way they've got. Yeah. And finally, and I've got to go, Michael Morse. Are you the former Major League first baseman Michael Morse? I feel like we need to know these things here. Or is it just coincidence? That's what we do here. We watch out for stuff as baseball people. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your comments. Let's get the Super Chats going in the future. And we usually do these in the morning. We'll be back tomorrow morning around 10:30-ish with our live show. We'll probably look ahead to Tuesday's games, maybe get to some stuff we didn't hit. Anyway, thank you for watching our SEC Baseball Power Rankings. God bless you. We'll see you again soon with more baseball content, along with our usual football and basketball content here at Southeastern 16.